I need you to tell me the truth before this gets uglier." Diane said it so calmly that for a second I thought I heard her wrong. We were standing at the edge of her driveway just after sunrise, close enough that I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers kept tightening around the handle of her coffee mug. She was not yelling. That somehow made it worse. "Truth about what?" I asked. Her eyes held mine, steady, unblinking. "About whether you want me," she said, "or whether you just want the way I make you forget her." The words hit so hard I felt them in my chest before my brain even caught up. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, because she had done something cruel without meaning to. She had said the one thing I had been trying not to say to myself. "I didn't come over here for this," I said, and even to my own ears it sounded weak. "No," she said softly. "You came over here because my porch light was on. Same reason you always come." That should not have embarrassed me, but it did, maybe because she was right. Maybe because for the last 2 months her porch light had started to mean more to me than my own front door. I looked past her toward the swing where we usually sat with coffee while the street stayed quiet and the whole world still felt half asleep. Everything looked the same. The folded blanket on the armrest. The little pot of basil she kept pretending was still alive. The book turned face down beside her chair. Same porch. Same woman, different air. "I'm not using you," I said. Her expression did not change. "That is not an answer." I swallowed. It would have been easier if she had been angry, easier if she had accused me or shut me out or made me defend myself. But Diane did something worse than that. She waited. And when a woman like her waited quietly, you started hearing things inside yourself you had been working very hard to avoid. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. That made something flicker in her face. Pain maybe, or relief. I could not tell. "Thank you," she said. I stared at her. "For what?" "For not lying." The shame of that almost broke me. Because the truth was ugly in the way most real things are ugly. It did not come in one clean shape. It came tangled. 6 months ago, I had an engagement ring in my kitchen drawer and a woman named Rebecca telling me she could not do this anymore. No screaming. No broken plates. No dramatic ending. She just set the ring on the counter between us and said, "I don't like who I am with you." I had not known what to say to that, because I did not like who I was with her either. We had become one of those couples people pity in restaurants. The kind that sits across from each other in silence, both pretending the problem is stress, timing, work, money, family. Anything but the simple truth. We had stayed too long. Then we had ended badly. And after that, I moved into the little house on Maple Grove because I wanted quiet so badly it felt like hunger. I wanted no memories. No shared corners, no wedding plans. No pity. Then Diane happened, not all at once. That would have been easier too. No, Diane happened slowly, in pieces. A wave near the mailbox, a half smile over the hedges. Her voice drifting across the yard one morning while she was trimming roses and I was pretending to know what to do with a dying fern. She lived next door in a white house with perfect shutters and a back porch that always looked like it belonged in a life better than mine. She moved like someone who had already survived something and did not feel the need to explain it. That was what got me first. Not how beautiful she was, though she was. Not her mouth. Not her eyes. It was the calm. The kind that made you wonder what it had cost. I did not know who she was to Rebecca when I first moved in. I did not know that little detail until later, until the ground under me was already shifting. By then it was too late to pretend it did not matter. Too late to pretend I had not started looking for her porch light. Too late to pretend she had not started leaving soup on my steps when I worked late. Too late to pretend I had not begun measuring my mornings by whether she was outside. And now here she was, asking me a question I could not dodge anymore. "Do you know what the worst part is?" she asked. I looked at her. She gave a small, tired laugh. "I should be smarter than this." "You think this is easy for me?" "No," she said. "I think that's the problem." We stood there with the quiet street behind us, and all the words we had not said pressing in from every side. Then she set her mug down on the porch rail and folded her arms like she was cold, even though the morning was warm. "I need to know whether I am a refuge," she said, "or a choice." That one hurt more than the first, because I knew what she meant. A refuge was temporary, a choice was dangerous. I dragged a hand over my face and looked away, across the yard, across the street, anywhere but at her. My pulse was beating hard enough to make me feel sick. "When did you start thinking this?" I asked. She did not answer right away. Then she said, "The night you almost kissed me." I turned back fast, almost. That finally pulled a real expression out of her, something close to a smile, sad but real. "Yes, almost. You think I didn't notice?" It came back to me in one violent rush. Her porch, late evening, a bottle of red wine between us, the sky dark and heavy above the trees, her hand resting near mine on the swing cushion, both of us pretending not to notice how close we had drifted. I had looked at her mouth, she had looked at mine, and then I had done nothing, not because I did not want to, because I wanted to too much. She watched my face and nodded once like my silence answered her. "That was the first moment I got scared," she said. "Scared of me. Scared of how badly I wanted you to stop being careful." That sentence went through me like heat. No woman had ever said anything to me quite like that. Not Rebecca, not anyone, because there was no game in it, no teasing, no performance, just a truth that sounded expensive. I took one step toward her before I could think better of it. "Diane." She lifted her chin slightly, but she did not move back. That mattered. I noticed everything then. The small line between her brows, the way her breath had changed, the way one loose piece of hair kept brushing her cheek in the breeze. "I'm trying to do this right," I said. "For who?" The question landed harder than it should have. "For you," I said. "For me, for whatever this is." Her eyes searched my face so carefully it made my throat tighten. Then she said the thing that changed everything. "What if I don't need right?" she whispered. "What if I need honest?" I should have answered her, I should have. But right then, tires crunched on gravel behind us. A black car rolled slowly to the curb in front of her house. Diane went still, not surprised, not confused, still. That was worse. The driver's door opened and a man in an expensive gray suit stepped out like he had every right to be there. Mid-50s maybe, silver at his temples, the kind of smile that looked polished instead of warm. He glanced at me once, then at Diane, and whatever was in his face made the morning turn cold. "Well," he said, "this is new." Diane's voice changed instantly, softer, guarded. "Lawrence." I did not know who he was yet, but I knew one thing immediately. He was not a man from the past. He was a man who still thought he belonged in the present. And when Diane reached for the porch rail like she suddenly needed something to hold her up, I understood something else too. Whatever I thought this story was going to be, I had been wrong from the start, because Diane was not just asking me whether I wanted her. She was asking whether I was strong enough to stay once I saw what wanting her would cost. Lawrence did not look at me like I was a person. He looked at me like I was evidence, something temporary, something inconvenient, something he could deal with later if he had to. Diane knew that look before I did. I could tell by the way her shoulders locked. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice was polite, too polite. That told me everything. Lawrence smiled and climbed the porch steps without waiting to be invited. "I stopped by because you weren't answering my calls." That was on purpose. He paused at that, then laughed softly like she had made a joke instead of drawing a line. His eyes shifted to me again. "And this is why." I stepped closer before I even thought about it. Not in front of Diane, not claiming anything. Just enough to make it clear he was not going to walk through this moment like I was invisible. "My name is Jake." "I know who you are," he said. That caught my attention. Diane's too. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket, still smiling that bloodless smile. "Maple Grove is not exactly a mystery. People talk. They notice who comes and goes." Diane went pale. It happened fast. A tiny change, but I saw it, and I hated him for it instantly. "You need to leave," she said. Lawrence looked at her like he was disappointed in a child. "We both know that tone never suited you." My hands curled at my sides. Diane drew in a breath that sounded painful. "Leave." He ignored her and looked at me instead. "Do you know who she is?" The question made the back of my neck go hot. because the truth was ugly and stupid and still not settled cleanly inside me. Yes, I knew. I knew Diane was Rebecca's mother. I had not known at first, not when I moved in, not when the small hellos started, not when she showed up with cookies and called my house cozy when it looked like a man had given up inside it. I found out 3 weeks in. Too late. Too late for the knowledge to stop anything, but early enough to poison every good thing after. I had come home late from work one Friday and found a package left by my door. Diane had taken it inside because rain was coming. When I went over to get it, her phone lit up on the counter with a text message preview. "Rebecca, Mom, please call me when you can." I remember freezing, not because of the name itself, because of the way Diane's face changed when she saw me see it. The air had gone strange right then. Too quiet, too careful. "You're Rebecca's mother?" I asked. She did not lie. "Yes." That one word had knocked every sound out of the room. I should have walked out, I know that. Any smart man would have. Instead, I stood there like my body no longer belonged to me, staring at the woman who had become the one soft part of my day. I remember laughing once. Dry, disbelieving. "You had months to tell me." "We have not known each other for months," she said. "We had coffee, we talked over fences, we were neighbors." "You knew who I was." Her eyes held mine, not at first. That mattered, and I knew it mattered, but I was too angry to let it matter then. When? The day Rebecca dropped off the box. I did not know what box she meant until she nodded toward her hall closet. "Your things," she said quietly. "Books, a sweater, a framed photo she did not want in her apartment anymore." That hit me harder than I expected. I had left pieces of myself in Rebecca's place without even noticing. That was the kind of ending we had. Not one big explosion, just quiet rejection in installments. Diane had looked wrecked saying it. "I should have told you sooner," she had said. "Yes." I didn't, because by then she stopped. By then what? Her voice had dropped so low I had to lean in to hear it. "By then I didn't want you to leave." That should not have landed the way it did. But it did, because it was not manipulative, it was honest. And honest things are always harder to fight. I had walked out after that, not fast, not dramatic, just numb. For 2 days I avoided my own yard like it was cursed. Then on Sunday evening I found a mug sitting on my porch step. Dark blue, ceramic, still warm, a sticky note under it in Diane's careful handwriting. "You have every right to hate me. But I would rather lose your trust for telling the truth than keep your company by hiding it. No excuses, no pressure. Just the truth." I did not go over that night, or the next, but I kept the note. I still had it in my kitchen drawer under takeout menus and batteries and old keys that did not open anything anymore. And maybe that should have told me something. Maybe that should have warned me this had already gotten too deep. Now Lawrence stood on Diane's porch, using the thing I had struggled with in private like a weapon in public. He took one slow step toward me. "Do you know what people will say if this keeps going?" Diane's face hardened. "I do not care what people say." It was a brave sentence. It was also a lie. I knew because I had seen the fear under it before. Not fear of guilt, fear of humiliation. Fear of being turned into a story by people who had never survived what she had survived. Lawrence smiled like he knew it too. "You say that now," he said, "but you cared very much last time." My eyes went to Diane. She did not look at me. That was when I understood this man was not just an ex. He was a witness to some old wound she had not let me see yet, and he knew exactly where to press. "That's enough," I said. His attention swung back to me. "Is it?" "Yes." He laughed under his breath. "This does not concern you." I stepped up onto the porch then. One deliberate move. Close enough now that he had to either acknowledge me or shove past me. "It concerns me if you're standing in front of her acting like she owes you something." That made his smile slip, just for a second, then he recovered. "Careful, you do not know the whole story." "No," I said. "But I know what someone sounds like when they enjoy having power." The words hung there, sharp, true. Diane made a small sound behind me, not fear, more like surprise, maybe because she had not expected me to say it. Maybe because no one had said it to him in a long time. Lawrence looked over my shoulder at her. This is what you want, a man who does not understand consequences. I almost answered, but Diane spoke first. No, she said. My stomach dropped. Then she stepped forward until she was beside me, not behind me. I want a man who does not mistake intimidation for love. For the first time since he arrived, Lawrence had no answer ready. I felt something shift in the air. Not peace. Not yet, but balance maybe. The kind that comes right before something breaks. Lawrence's face lost whatever charm it had been wearing. You are making a mistake. Diane held his gaze. That stopped being your problem a long time ago. His jaw tightened. For one ugly second I thought he might say something cruel enough to leave a scar. The kind of sentence people hear years later when they are trying to fall asleep. Instead, he straightened his jacket. You think this neighborhood has changed, he said. It has not. They will talk. They will stare. They will turn you into exactly what they turned you into before. Diane flinched, tiny but real, and there it was, the bruise under the skin. My anger cooled into something steadier, something more dangerous, because now I knew what mattered, not him, her. The fear still living inside her. Lawrence looked at me one last time. You will leave too. He said it like prophecy, like fact, like men before me had already proved him right. Then he walked down the steps, got back in his car, and drove off without another word. The street went quiet again, but it was not the same quiet. Diane stared after the car long after it had disappeared. I did not touch her. I wanted to. I wanted to pull her into me and tell her nobody was going to talk her into being small again. But some moments are too raw for comfort. Sometimes comfort feels like pressure if it comes too soon. So I stood there and waited. After almost a full minute, she let out a shaky breath. I'm sorry. That pulled something hard in me. Do not apologize for him. Her laugh came out brittle. I wasn't apologizing for him. She finally turned to face me. Her eyes looked brighter now, but she still was not crying. I was apologizing for this, she said, for the mess of me. I hated that line the second it left her mouth, because it told me too much about what she had been taught to believe. I shook my head. You don't get to say that. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. I stepped closer, careful this time, not enough to crowd her, just enough that she could hear the next part without me raising my voice. You are not a mess, I said. You are a person somebody handled badly. She looked at me the way people look at a door they are afraid to open. The silence stretched. Then she asked, do you mean that? I thought about Rebecca, about the ring on the counter, about every fight where both of us had wanted to win more than understand, about the years Diane had spent with Gregory, about Lawrence standing here like history gave him rights. Yes, I said, I mean it. Her mouth parted like she might say something, but instead she looked away, toward my house, toward the space between us that had somehow become the whole problem and the whole answer at the same time. You should go, she whispered. Pain moved through me so fast I almost answered with anger, but I heard the difference in her voice. This was not rejection, it was panic, and panic always sounds colder than it means to. Do you want me to? I asked. She closed her eyes. That was answer enough. Not because she wanted me gone, because staying was making it harder for her to breathe. So I nodded once. I'll go. She pressed her lips together and gave a tiny nod back, like she hated herself for asking. I turned and walked down her steps. Every instinct in me was screaming to stop, to turn around, to force one more conversation, one more truth, one more promise. But love is not proved by pushing past a boundary. Not real love. Real love knows when to stand still. I reached the edge of her driveway before her voice stopped me. Jake. I turned. She was still on the porch, one hand wrapped tight around the rail. I was not lying before, she said, her voice barely carrying across the yard. When I said I wanted you to stop being careful. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. She swallowed. But if you come any closer right now, I won't know how to do this slowly. There are sentences a man remembers forever. That was one of them. I held her gaze and nodded once. Then I said the only honest thing I had. I'm not afraid of slowly. Something softened in her face then, not peace, not certainty, but something that looked almost like hope. I walked back to my house with my pulse pounding and Lawrence's words still hanging in the air. You will leave too. Maybe he believed that because men like him always do. They think patience is weakness. They think tenderness is temporary. They think if they wait long enough, fear will do their work for them. He did not know me. He did not know what it feels like to lose the wrong woman, and then meet the right one in the worst possible way. He did not know some people are worth the shame, the talk, the delay, the careful steps. And he definitely did not know the first moment this whole thing had gone wrong. Not the morning with the package, not the coffee, not the porch light, no. It started at a kitchen window, with Diane catching me looking, with a smile that should have embarrassed me more than it did, and 4 words that had lived under my skin ever since. Wanna see. I had not understood then that she was never asking what I thought she was asking. She was asking whether I could bear to look at a real person, not the calm version, not the neighbor version, not the woman I wanted to want. The truth. And standing in my kitchen that morning with her porch still in view through my own window, I realized something that made my chest tighten. I had been answering that question from the start. I just had not said it out loud yet. The first time Diane caught me looking at her, I had a dead plant in one hand and Rebecca's voice in my head. That was the state of my life back then. Neglect in one hand, regret in the other. I had been living on Maple Grove for 12 days. Long enough to unpack the boxes I needed and ignore the ones that asked harder questions. Long enough to learn which floorboard near my bedroom door creaked. Long enough to understand that silence can sound peaceful in the daytime and brutal at night. I woke up early that morning because sleep had turned against me again. Not dramatic sleep, not nightmares, just the kind where your eyes open before dawn and your brain starts reading old arguments like they are legal evidence. Rebecca had a way of coming back to me in pieces, not the good pieces either, the sharp ones. Her standing at the sink saying, "You don't listen unless I'm already upset." Her sitting in the car after dinner with my parents, staring out the window saying, "Why does everything with you feel like a test I'm failing?" And the worst one of all, her setting the ring down on the counter and saying, "I am so tired of being almost happy." That sentence had followed me into the new house, into the shower, into work, into the grocery store, into every quiet moment that should have belonged to something else. So that morning I gave up on sleep, walked out to my porch, and decided I was going to water the miserable plants I had bought to make myself look like a man who could keep something alive. I was standing there in an old t-shirt and sweats, barefoot, half awake, pouring too much water into a pot that probably needed sunlight more than effort when I looked up. Her kitchen window was open to the morning. No curtain, no warning, just Diane moving through soft yellow light like it belonged to her. She was making coffee, nothing more than that, nothing a sane man should have frozen over, but I did. She wore a cream-colored robe tied loosely at the waist. Her hair was twisted up, though a few pieces had slipped free around her face. She moved with that same quiet steadiness I would later come to know too well. Not slow, not dramatic, just at ease, at home in herself. That was what got me, not her body, not the robe, not the shape of her mouth when she hummed under her breath. It was the ease. I had been living inside tension for so long that peace looked almost intimate. I should have looked away. I knew that. Even then I knew it. But grief makes strange thieves out of people. It steals judgment first, then pride, then time. I stood there with the watering can tilted too far, water spilling over my foot, and watched a woman I did not know move through her own mourning like the world had not broken her. Then she turned and saw me. I remember every single feeling at once, heat in my face, my stomach dropping, my hand going still, the instant knowledge that I looked exactly like what I was trying not to be. A man staring through a window. She should have shut the curtain right then. She should have glared, should have called out, should have made me carry the shame of it immediately. Instead, Diane smiled. Not a flirtatious smile, not an amused one, something quieter, like she had caught me reaching for something I did not know how to ask for. She set down her mug and walked toward the window. I should have moved. I did not. She stopped close enough that I could hear her through the screen if she spoke loud enough. Then she tilted her head and said, very clearly, "Want to see?" I swear my whole body forgot how to work, because there was no anger in it, no accusation, just a question. And before I could make sense of what she meant, she reached up and slid the curtain closed. Not fast, not hard, slowly, leaving me standing there with my dead plant, my wet foot, and about 12 new reasons to never show my face again. I went back inside and locked my own door like that would somehow help. For the rest of the day, those 3 words followed me everywhere. At work, while I sat in a meeting pretending to care about municipal revisions to a stairwell plan. In the elevator. At lunch. Driving home, want to see, not what are you looking at. Not can I help you. Not get lost. She had not even sounded offended. That was what made it unbearable. By the time the next morning came, I had built 6 different explanations in my head. Maybe she had been mocking me. Maybe she had just meant the garden because it was visible through the side gate. Maybe she had seen how wrecked I looked and taken pity on me in the strangest way possible. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe I was. I avoided my porch that morning, and the morning after that. I started leaving through the front door with ridiculous caution, like there might be cameras documenting my moral collapse. Then 3 days later, I came home from work and found her kneeling in her front garden with a trowel in one hand and dirt streaked across her jeans. She looked up when my car door shut, smiled, waved, like nothing had happened. That somehow was worse. "Evening," she called, my throat tightened. "Hey." She looked at the sagging fern near my porch and then back at me. "You're drowning that one." I stared at her. She held up the trowel and pointed toward the pot. "Too much water. The leaves are yellowing. You're loving it to death." That should not have made me laugh, but it did. A short, unwilling sound. And for the first time since the window, I stopped feeling only embarrassed. "You can tell that from over there?" I asked. She shrugged. "I can tell from your face you're also probably overwatering everything else in your life." That one got a real laugh out of me. Quick, sharp, surprising. She smiled like she had not expected that either. Then she went back to her roses. And just like that, the moment at the window became something stranger than shame. It became unfinished. A week later, I was losing a fight with my mailbox. The post had come loose after a storm, and I had decided, for reasons that still embarrass me, that a hammer and confidence were basically the same thing. They are not. I was on my knees in the grass trying to drive a nail into wood that clearly hated me when Diane's voice drifted over from next door. "You're about 3 bad swings away from making that a neighborhood issue." I looked up. She was standing at the edge of the yard with pruning shears in one hand and a look on her face that said she was trying not to enjoy this too much. "I've got it," I said. "You really don't." She crossed the grass before I could argue, set the shears down, and held out her hand for the hammer. I gave it to her because there are moments in a man's life when dignity is already gone, so you may as well choose efficiency. She crouched beside the post, packed dirt around the base, adjusted the angle, and drove the nail in with 3 clean strikes. Done. It stood straight immediately. I stared at the mailbox, then at her. "That feels insulting," I said. She smiled without looking at me. "Only if you make it insulting." When she handed the hammer back, our fingers brushed. Just a second, but both of us felt it. I knew because her eyes lifted to mine and then dropped away too fast. The air changed. Not romantic, not yet, just charged, as if something small and dangerous had woken up and was now listening. "Thanks," I said. "You're welcome, neighbor." She picked up her shears, then paused. "Jake, right?" I nodded, "Yeah." "I'm Diane." "I know." That made her look back at me. I should have left it there. Instead, because some part of me had clearly lost interest in self-preservation, I added, "You ask strange questions." To my surprise, she laughed, low, warm, real, "And you stare like a man who wants one answered." Then she walked away and left me standing there with the hammer hanging useless at my side and my pulse doing something stupid. That was the first time I understood 2 things. 1, Diane was not nearly as calm as she looked. 2. Neither was I after that. We started talking the way neighbors do when they are trying very hard to make something seem ordinary. At first, it was small. She asked if the trash pickup had changed days again. I asked how she kept squirrels out of her tomatoes. She asked if architects actually enjoyed meetings or just endured them professionally. I asked why she was at war with Basil. She said Basil required emotional commitment and she was not there yet. I laughed so hard at that I had to lean against my porch rail. The easy talk came first. Then the noticing. A package brought under shelter before rain. An extra lemon left on my porch because she had too many. A text on the neighborhood group about road work that she forwarded to me because she said I looked like the type who would absolutely miss it and then be furious. One morning, I found a travel mug sitting on my porch step. Dark blue ceramic. A sticky note under it. You left for work without coffee. That feels unsafe. No name, no signature, just that. I carried that mug with me all day. I told myself it was because the coffee was good. I was lying. There is something dangerous about being noticed at the exact place where you have gone numb. It wakes things. The next evening I returned the mug. She opened the door wearing gray socks and an oversized sweater, her hair still damp like she had just showered. For one stupid second I forgot why I was there. Then I lifted the mug. You left this. She looked at it and smiled. Did I? I held it out. You did. She took it from me, our fingers brushing again, and I noticed something I had not seen before. A small white scar near her wrist. Thin. Old. The kind that makes you wonder what story lives behind it. She saw me notice. I saw her see me notice. Neither of us said a word. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. I made cookies, she said. You can either take some and leave or come in and save me from eating all of them alone. That was the moment. Not the window, not the mailbox, not the mug, the first doorway, the first choice. I should have said no. A decent man with fresh heartbreak and functioning boundaries would have, but I had not been decent for months, just lonely. And for the first time since Rebecca gave back the ring, lonely had started to feel less like safety and more like a bad habit. So I stepped inside Diane's house. And the worst part is, I knew immediately I was in trouble. Not because of anything dramatic, because it felt easy. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and coffee. A dish towel hung over the oven handle. A book lay open on the table with a pair of reading glasses folded neatly on top. There was music playing somewhere low in the background, soft enough that I could not name it. The whole place felt lived in, not staged, not perfect, real. And I remember thinking something then that I did not have words for until much later. Peace is most dangerous when you have been starving for it. Diane set the cookies down between us, leaned against the counter and asked, So tell me something true, Jake. I looked at her. She held my gaze, calm again, but not distant, and for reasons I still do not fully understand, I answered. I don't know how to start over, I said. Her expression changed, just a little, enough. Then maybe don't start over, she said quietly. Maybe just start honest. There are lines that sound simple until they follow you home. That was one of them. Because I left her house that night with sugar on my tongue, her voice in my head, and the uncomfortable sense that whatever was happening between us had begun long before either of us was brave enough to name it. And standing on my own porch after dark, looking back at the warm light in her kitchen window, I realized I wanted something I had no business wanting. Not just more time with her. More truth. More of whatever she had almost offered that first morning. Want to see? I did. I just had no idea yet what seeing her was going to require from me. After that night, Diane became part of my life so quietly I almost missed how complete it was. There was no big conversation, no rule, no moment where we sat down and said this means something now. It just happened. One morning I came outside and found 2 chairs on her back porch turned toward the sunrise instead of toward the yard. The next morning there were 2 mugs on the little table between them. By the 3rd morning she did not even pretend she was surprised to see me walking across the grass. You're late, she said without looking up from the book in her lap. I checked my phone. It's 6:07. She took a sip of coffee. Exactly. That became our rhythm. Coffee before work, sometimes on her porch, sometimes on mine. Sometimes we talked the whole time. Sometimes one of us was tired and we just sat there listening to birds and distant traffic and the strange comfort of not having to fill every silence. It did not feel exciting. It felt better. Excitement burns hot, then it asks for proof. This was different. This was the kind of quiet that made room for truth. One Tuesday morning she asked, "Did you always want to be an architect?" I stared out at the yard. No. I wanted to be a baseball player until high school kindly informed me that I was average in every direction. That made her laugh into her mug. Then what changed? My grandfather. Something in my voice must have shifted because she lowered her cup and waited. He built things, I said. Small stuff mostly. Cabinets, porch railings, a workbench in our garage that outlived 2 cars and 1 bad remodel. He used to say the best kind of work is the kind people lean on without thinking about it. Diane smiled softly. That sounds like you. I looked at her. No, it sounds like him. She tilted her head. Same thing, maybe. Nobody had ever said that to me before. Not Rebecca, not my boss, not even my own family. It should not have mattered so much, but it did. That was how Diane worked. She did not flatter, she noticed. And there is a difference big enough to change a person. A few days later she told me about Gregory, not the polished version, not the story people probably got at church or dinner parties, the real one. We were sitting on her porch while a sprinkler clicked somewhere down the block. She had one knee tucked under her, both hands around her mug though the coffee had already gone cold. I used to think betrayal would look dramatic, she said. Lipstick on a collar. Late-night phone calls, something obvious. I stayed quiet. She glanced at me once, then back at the yard. It wasn't obvious. That's what made me feel stupid after. Her voice stayed calm, but I could hear the strain under it. It started with little things. He stopped asking me questions. Then he stopped waiting for the answers. He'd come home and smile at his phone. I'd ask what was so funny and he'd say work. I knew it wasn't work. But every time I brought it up, he made me feel like I was reaching for problems because I couldn't stand peace. I felt anger rise in me so fast I had to set my mug down. She noticed that too. See, she said gently, that look. What look? The one where you want to save me from a thing that already happened. I rubbed a hand over my mouth. Sorry. Don't be. It's just not where I live anymore. I wanted to believe that, but pain leaves habits behind. Even after it leaves the room, it leaves doors unlocked. What happened when you found out? I asked. She looked down at the coffee in her hands. He told me he was tired of being needed. The sentence sat between us. Ugly, cruel, almost elegant in the way selfish people make cruelty sound thoughtful. I stared at her. He said that. She nodded once. Then he packed a suitcase and told me I was strong enough to be fine. I let out a slow breath through my nose. Strong enough to be fine, I repeated. That may be the most cowardly sentence I've ever heard. That got a real laugh out of her, short, surprised. Yes, she said, it was. Then she grew quiet again. For a long time I thought maybe he was right. About what? That I was easier to leave because I looked like I could survive it. I turned fully toward her then. Diane. She lifted one shoulder like none of it mattered now, which told me some of it still did. That's the problem with looking calm, she said. People confuse it with not bleeding. I felt that line go straight into me. There it was again, that thing she did. One sentence, right to the center. I reached over without thinking and took the mug from her hands before she could drop it. Then I set it down beside mine and held out my hand. Not a dramatic gesture, not romance, just an opening. She looked at it for a second. Then she placed her hand in mine, warm, steady, trusting me with just enough. We sat like that for a while without speaking. The silence did not feel empty. It felt shared. That should have been the moment things became simple. It was. Because simple is what people call a story when they are standing outside it. Inside it, everything still had edges. The first real edge came from Rebecca, not in person, on my phone. A text at 11:14 on a Thursday while I was reviewing drawings at work. Rebecca, Mom says you live on Maple Grove now. Small world. I stared at the message too long, then another one came. Rebecca. You okay? That should have been harmless. Maybe it was meant that way, but my pulse still picked up. Because the fact that Diane and Rebecca talked should not have surprised me. She was her mother. Of course they talked. Still, something about seeing Rebecca's name on my screen while Diane's coffee mug sat on the corner of my desk hit me in a way I did not like. I typed 3 different replies, deleted all of them, finally sent the safest one, me. Yeah, doing okay, hope you are too, she responded a minute later. Rebecca. I'm trying, that was it. No hidden meaning, no trap. Just 2 people who used to plan a wedding now texting like distant relatives at Christmas. I should have let it go there. Instead, I spent the rest of the afternoon unsettled, because guilt is annoying like that. It does not need logic, it just needs a weak point. By the time I got home, I had worked myself into a mood I did not deserve to bring anywhere near Diane. So of course that was exactly when she appeared at the edge of the driveway holding a bowl covered in foil. I made too much pasta salad, she said. Again. I am either bad at portions, or secretly feeding a family of 6. I tried to smile, could be both. She studied my face for half a second, too perceptive, always too perceptive. What happened? Nothing. One eyebrow lifted. That answer has never convinced anyone in human history. Despite myself, I laughed. Then I hated how relieved that laugh felt. She stepped closer and held out the bowl. Do you want dinner or not? I took it from her, thanks. She did not leave, just stood there in the late light with one hand resting on her hip, waiting. The pressure of being gently known is a strange thing. It makes lying feel childish. Rebecca texted me, I said finally. Something moved across her face, not jealousy, not guilt exactly, something older. I'm sorry, she said. I frowned. Why are you apologizing? Because if she's reaching out, it's probably because of me. I told her you moved nearby. That landed oddly, not wrong, just intimate in a way I had not prepared for. You talk about me. Her mouth curved a little. You say that like it's illegal. It feels dangerous. Yes, she said, that's because it is. Neither of us smiled after that. The air had changed. Again. Diane looked down at the bowl in my hands and then back up at me. Did it upset you? I thought about lying, didn't, not because I want her back. Her expression stayed still, but I dragged a hand through my hair, but it made everything feel real in a different way. There was a long pause, then she nodded, I know. I believed that she did. That was the worst part. She understood things I was still trying to name. Do you regret this? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. Her eyes widened a little, then softened. No, she said. Do you? I should have answered immediately. That would have been cleaner. Safer too, maybe. But honesty does not always arrive quickly. Sometimes it arrives with bruises. I regret the timing, I said. I regret the history. I regret that if anyone looked at this from the outside, they'd probably turn it into something cheap. Her face did not move. That scared me more than if she had flinched. But I don't regret you, I said. Still she said nothing. So I kept going because some truths once opened cannot be shut halfway. I don't regret the mornings. I don't regret the coffee. I don't regret the way this street feels different when I know your light is on. I don't regret how easy it is to be honest with you. I don't regret wanting more of that. The silence after that was brutal, not empty, loaded. Then Diane took one small step toward me. I need to tell you something, she said. The seriousness in her voice made me brace. Okay. She folded her arms like she was steadying herself from the inside. Lawrence was just someone I dated after Gregory. I waited. Her gaze dropped past my shoulder toward the yard. He was there before the divorce was final, not physically, she said quickly. Not like that, but emotionally. He was there, calling, checking in, telling me Gregory was selfish, telling me I deserved more, telling me he understood me. I felt something cold move through me. Predators do not always look dark from the beginning. Sometimes they look helpful. Diane laughed once without humor. I thought he was kind. I thought he was patient. I thought being chosen by someone after being left would fix the humiliation. It didn't. No. Her smile vanished. It taught me that being wanted and being safe are not the same thing. I held the bowl a little tighter. What did he do? Her eyes came back to mine, and there it was, that question, the one that always matters, not what happened, what did it cost? He never hit me, she said, reading the fear on my face before I spoke it. Nothing like that. I let out a breath. But he liked debt, she went on. Emotional debt. Every favor came with a string. Every kindness had a receipt. If I pulled away, he reminded me what he had done for me, what people had said about me, how grateful I should be that someone still wanted me after the divorce. The bowl in my hands may as well have been stone, because I knew men like that, not personally maybe, but I knew the type. They build cages out of gratitude and then act shocked when you call it a cage. I stayed too long, she said quietly, not because I loved him, because I was ashamed that leaving one bad man had brought me to another. I set the bowl down on my porch rail before I dropped it. Then I looked at her and said the only thing that felt true. That says nothing bad about you. A small line appeared between her brows. You don't have to rescue every part of me. I'm not rescuing you. Then what are you doing? I stepped closer, close enough now to see her breathing change. I'm refusing to agree with the worst thing that was done to you. That hit, I saw it hit. She looked away fast, blinking once, then twice. For the first time since I had known her, she looked close to crying. Not because she was weak, because some people survive by never hearing gentleness spoken in the place where blame used to live. I should have stopped there, should have let the moment rest. Instead, maybe because the evening had turned too honest to survive small talk, I said, I almost kissed you that night on the porch because I knew if I did, nothing inside me would be able to pretend this was casual anymore. She turned back to me slowly. And why didn't you? Because I thought wanting you might already make me a bad man. Her face changed in a way I could not fully read. Pain, tenderness, maybe both. Then she asked, and what do you think now? I did not answer, not right away. Because right then the answer was standing in front of me with tired eyes and quiet courage and more history than either of us could carry lightly. I thought about Rebecca, the ring, the box of things, the note in my drawer, the mornings on the porch, the way Diane never pushed when I went quiet, the way she always told the truth even when it cost her, and somewhere inside all of that, the answer rose clean. I think wanting you is the most honest thing that's happened to me in a long time. Neither of us moved. The sun was dropping lower now, turning the edges of her hair gold. Her lips parted. Then she looked past me toward the street. Her whole body changed, again, sharp, guarded. I turned. Across the road, Mrs. Henderson was standing by her mailbox pretending not to stare. She lifted one hand in a little wave that somehow felt more invasive than rude. Diane stepped back immediately. The distance between us returned so fast it almost made me dizzy. Right, she said, too bright, too careful. Well, enjoy the pasta salad. Her voice had changed so completely it made my chest hurt. Diane. She shook her head once, not angry, afraid. And suddenly I understood the real size of this problem. It was not just Lawrence. It was witnesses, eyes, mouths, neighborhood memory. The ugly pleasure people take in other people's pain when it arrives in a shape they can discuss over lemonade and folding chairs. Diane gave me a tight smile that was almost not a smile at all. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. It sounded like hope trying to wear the clothes of habit. Then she turned and walked back to her house. I stood there until her door closed. Then I picked up the bowl, carried it inside, and did not touch it for an hour, because for the first time I understood something I had been too selfish to see clearly before. It was not enough for Diane to want me. She would have to survive being seen wanting me, and that was a much harder thing. The next morning her porch light was off. That should not have mattered as much as it did. It was just a bulb, a habit. a small yellow square in the dark before sunrise. But for the last few months, that light had become a promise I never asked for and somehow trusted anyway. A quiet little sign that said the day could begin soft instead of hard. Now it was dark. I stood in my kitchen longer than I want to admit, coffee cooling in my hand, staring through my own window at her silent porch like a man waiting for weather to change. Maybe she had slept in. Maybe she had a headache. Maybe she just wanted one morning alone. All of those were normal explanations. None of them felt true. By 7:30, I was late for work and in a mood bad enough to ruin other people's day if I stayed home with it, so I grabbed my keys and left. I did not see her car. That hit me strangely too, like a skipped heartbeat. At the office, I spent 2 hours making mistakes I should not have been making. Wrong measurements, missed emails, a structural note sent to the wrong contractor. My assistant, Ben, stood in my doorway around 10 and said, "You want to tell me what disaster you're hiding, or should I just assume this is romantic?" I looked up from my desk. Why does everyone always assume romance? He shrugged. Because when men fall apart at work, it's usually either money, family, or a woman. You don't look rich enough for money, and you're too proud to admit family. I should not have laughed, but I did. A tired, defeated sound. "Romantic enough for you?" he asked. "I'm fine." "That bad, huh?" He left me alone after that, but I could still hear his sentence in my head for the next hour. That bad, huh? Yes, it was that bad. Because there is a particular kind of ache that comes when nothing is officially wrong, but everything you care about feels one wrong sentence away from breaking. At lunch, I checked my phone. Nothing from Diane. By 3, I had checked it often enough to become embarrassed by myself. At 4:13, a message finally came through. "Diane, I'm sorry about this morning. I needed a little space. I hope your day went okay." That should have relieved me. Instead, it made my stomach twist, because the words were kind, careful, distance wrapped in politeness. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Me. It was a rough day. Are you okay?" The typing bubbles appeared, vanished, came back, then. "Diane. Not really, but I will be." I leaned back in my chair and shut my eyes. That line again. The same one she always used when she was holding herself together with both hands and refusing to call it pain. I replied before I could overthink it. "Me. Do you want company or quiet?" This time her answer came fast. "Diane. Quiet, please don't take that personally." I wrote back. "Me. I won't." That was the right answer, the generous answer, the patient answer. It also felt terrible. That evening I sat on my porch alone and tried to act like I respected quiet without resenting it. Across the yard, her blinds were half closed. The porch stayed empty. No swing, no mug, no Diane. A little before sunset, Chris called. I almost let it ring out, but I knew if I stayed inside my own head any longer, I would become unbearable. "What's up?" I answered. "You sound like somebody died." "Comforting start." "Thank you, it's a gift." I could hear traffic behind him, probably leaving the gym, probably annoyingly stable. "You want to get dinner?" he asked. "Not really." "That confirms it, tell me." So I did, not every detail, not Rebecca's name, not the whole history, but enough. The woman next door, the morning coffee, the almost kiss, the fear, the man in the suit, the way being seen had become the problem. Chris listened longer than I expected him to. Then he exhaled into the phone and said, "Okay, so you're in love with her." I sat up straight. "No." He laughed once. "Jake, I'm not." "You don't stare at your phone for hours because you're mildly intrigued." I did not say I was staring at my phone. "You didn't have to." I rubbed a hand over my face. The thing about close friends is they do not need your confession if your silence is already loud enough. "I don't know what this is," I said. "Yes, you do. You just don't like the timing." That sentence annoyed me because it felt true. Chris kept going. "So what's the actual problem?" I looked across the yard at Diane's dark porch. "The actual problem is that wanting me costs her more than it costs me." There was a pause, then his voice changed. Less teasing, more serious. That's not a small thing. No. So what are you going to do? I thought about that. About Lawrence. About Mrs. Henderson pretending not to stare. About Diane's face every time shame entered the room before she did. Finally, I said, I think I have to stop making this harder for her. Chris was quiet for a second, meaning maybe I need to back off. Saying it out loud felt like swallowing glass, but it also felt responsible, like maybe love, if that is what this had become, was going to ask me for something uglier than patience. Distance. Chris let out a low breath. That sounds mature and miserable. Thank you. Anytime. When we hung up, I stayed on the porch until the air turned cold enough to chase me inside. I did not text her again. I did not walk across the yard. I did not invent a reason to knock on her door. I gave her the quiet she asked for. And then the next morning I gave her more than that. I stayed home, not from work, from her. I left through the front door before sunrise and got coffee from a gas station on the highway like a man being punished by his own principles. It was terrible. Burned and bitter, and somehow both too hot and disappointing. I drank all of it because some mistakes should taste like mistakes. I did the same thing the next day, and the day after that. By Friday, the routine had become a kind of private cruelty. Wake up early, think of her, leave before I could see her porch, work too long. Come home tired, sit alone with the feeling that I was doing the right thing in exactly the way that breaks your spirit. On Saturday afternoon, I was in my garage pretending to organize tools I barely used when I heard my name. Jake. I froze, then turned. Diane stood in the open garage doorway in jeans and a pale blue sweater, her hair pulled back, one hand curled loosely around the frame as if she had almost decided not to come in. I had not seen her up close in 4 days. It felt much longer. Hey, I said, brilliant, deeply moving, a man of language. Her eyes moved over the half-sorted mess on my workbench. You alphabetizing your regrets. That got a laugh out of me before I could stop it. Something like that. She stepped inside, not far, just enough that the sunlight behind her stopped making her look untouchable. I haven't seen you in the mornings, she said. There was no accusation in it. That somehow made it worse. I set down the box of screws in my hand. I figured maybe some distance would help. The quiet after that lasted too long, then she nodded once. I see. There are sentences that sound simple but still bleed. That was one. I leaned back against the workbench and forced myself to meet her eyes. I'm trying not to make your life harder. By disappearing. I'm not disappearing. Her eyebrows lifted a little. No. No. She crossed her arms and looked at me in that calm, impossible way that always made lying feel childish. You left before sunrise for 3 straight mornings. I blinked. You noticed. The second the question left my mouth, I wanted it back. Of course she noticed. That was the whole point of her. She looked down for a moment, then back up. Yes, Jake, I noticed. Something in my chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. I pushed off the workbench and took one step toward her, not close enough to crowd her, just enough to stop pretending this was casual. I thought giving you space was the decent thing. It probably was. That was not what I wanted her to say, but I asked. She let out a slow breath, but it felt awful. I stared at her. She looked almost irritated by her own honesty now, which made me love it more. I asked for quiet, she said. I did not ask you to become a ghost. My voice came out lower than before. I didn't know the difference. I know. Another silence. This one warmer, sadder, closer to truth. Then she looked past me toward the open garage, toward the bright street beyond it, and I knew what was coming before she said it. I had dinner at my daughter's house on Thursday. Rebecca, the name was not spoken, but it arrived anyway. I stayed still. Diane's fingers tightened a little against her sleeves. She asked me if I was happy. I swallowed. And what did you say? Her eyes came back to mine. I said I didn't know yet, because happiness feels fragile when people might use it against you. Every word in that sentence landed. Did she ask about me? A small smile touched her mouth. Not happy, not exactly. She asked if there was someone. I waited. I told her yes. The whole garage seemed to lose sound for a second. You told her? Yes. I should have been relieved or terrified. Instead, I felt both, hard enough to make me grip the edge of the workbench behind me. What did she say? Diane looked at me so steadily it almost felt like mercy. She asked if he was kind to me. I did not breathe, and I said, her voice softened. I told her kinder than I expected, kinder than I knew what to do with at first. That should have felt like hope, but Diane's face did not fully open. Something was still wrong. She also said, Diane went on, that Maple Grove is a neighborhood built on lawns and opinions. I let out a humorless laugh. That sounds right. She wasn't warning me because she disapproved. She was warning me because she remembers what happened after the divorce. There it was again, the old wound. The part no one had explained all the way. I looked at her carefully. What did happen? For a second, I thought she might avoid it again. Then she stepped farther into the garage and said, "Come with me." I frowned. Where? My porch. That was all. No explanation, just that. So I followed her. We crossed the yard in silence, not touching, not looking at each other much, both of us carrying something too delicate for careless movement. The late light turned everything gold. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A lawnmower started and then died. Ordinary sounds. Strange how ordinary sounds can feel disrespectful when your whole life is leaning toward one answer. Diane led me to the porch swing but did not sit right away. Instead, she went inside for a moment and came back with a small wooden box. Not jewelry, not decorative, practical, worn at the corners. She sat down at last and placed it in her lap. I took the other end of the swing and waited. Her fingers rested on the lid without opening it. For a while after Gregory left, she said, I thought if I kept my head down, people would get bored. She gave a small laugh. They didn't. The porch creaked softly under our weight. Some of them pitied me, which I could have handled, but some of them enjoyed it. They liked having a story to pass around. Why he left, who he left for, whether I had been cold, whether I had been difficult, whether a woman my age should have expected better. My jaw tightened. Diane opened the box. Inside were folded notes, newspaper clippings, a church bulletin, a photograph turned face down. I looked at her. She gave a tiny nod like permission. I reached in and picked up one of the folded slips. It was anonymous, just 3 words written in sharp blue ink. No wonder he left. I felt something dark move through me. Another note. Women like you should learn when they've expired. My hand went still. Jesus. Diane said softly. That was one of the gentler ones. I looked up at her in disbelief. She was not crying. That somehow made it worse. Who sent these? She gave one helpless little shrug. Cowards, neighbors, church ladies, maybe people who smiled at me in the grocery store. It almost doesn't matter. I picked up the church bulletin next. A penned circle around a sermon title, Restoring the Family. Underneath, someone had written, too late. I had no words, none useful, none clean enough. I kept them, Diane said, watching my face, because I needed proof I wasn't imagining it, that it really happened, that people could look at a woman already abandoned and still decide she deserved a little more punishment. I put everything back into the box like the paper might cut me. Then I noticed the photograph, still face down. Can I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. I turned it over. Diane, Gregory, Rebecca between them, maybe 16 years old in the picture, all 3 smiling at something outside the frame, a family before it knew. I looked at the photo for a long second, then put it back very carefully. Why are you showing me this now? I asked. Her answer came quiet. Because if you stay, you should know what staying means. I turned to face her fully. And suddenly it all became clear in one devastating shape. This was not about gossip. Not really. This was about memory, humiliation with roots. the terror of being turned into public entertainment one more time. Diane looked down at her hands in her lap. I can survive people being cruel, she said. I've already done it, but I don't know if I can survive being the reason it touches you too. There it was, the sacrifice no one had asked for, not pushing me away because she did not care, pushing me away because she did. My throat tightened. I reached for the box, closed the lid, and set it gently on the table beside us. Then I took her hand. This time she did not hesitate. I need you to hear me, I said. She looked up. I am not staying because this is easy. I'm not staying because I'm confused or lonely or trying to replace the person I lost. I'm staying because every time this gets harder, I want the truth more, not less. Her eyes filled then, not spilling, just shining. I kept going. And if people talk, let them spend themselves on it. I'm done letting strangers decide whether something honest is allowed to live. Her fingers tightened around mine. Jake. No, let me finish. Her mouth closed. I drew one slow breath. I can handle whispers. I can handle stupid looks at block parties. I can handle old women pretending they're praying when they're really collecting details. What I can't handle is standing in my kitchen every morning pretending I don't know exactly where my peace lives. That broke something open in her face. A tear slipped free before she could stop it. I moved then, not fast, not to fix, just enough to wipe it away with my thumb. She closed her eyes at the touch like it hurt and healed at the same time. When she opened them, she whispered, "You make bravery sound so simple." It isn't simple. No, she said, it's you. We were so close now I could feel the warmth of her breath. Close enough that I knew exactly how easy it would be to kiss her. Close enough that I also knew kissing her now would turn this moment into relief when what it needed was witness. So I did not. Instead, I rested my forehead lightly against hers and stayed there. No rush, no claiming, just contact, just truth. After a moment, she let out a shaky breath and said, almost like confession, "I turned the porch light off because I wanted to punish myself for needing you." My eyes closed. Did it work? A soft, broken laugh left her. No. Good. That made her laugh again, really laugh this time, though there were still tears in it. Then she pulled back just enough to look at me. I don't know how to do this without being scared. I held her gaze. Then be scared with me. She stared at me for a long second. Then she nodded, small, certain, enough. And just when I thought the evening could not hold any more truth, she whispered the sentence that changed everything again. "Rebecca wants to meet you." For a second I thought I heard her wrong. Rebecca wants to what? Diane's fingers stayed wrapped around mine, but I felt the tension move through them anyway. "Meet you," she said again. Not as some test, not to make a scene, she just asked. I leaned back enough to see her face clearly. "You told her everything." "No," she gave a tired half smile. "Not everything. I told her there is someone important to me. I told her it was complicated. I told her I was scared of how the world would frame it and more scared of losing it because of that." "And she said she wants to meet me." "Yes." I looked out at the yard for a second because my mind needed somewhere to stand. Of all the things I had prepared myself for, this was not one of them. Lawrence, yes. Whispers, yes. Side-eyes at a neighborhood party, yes. But sitting across from the woman I had once planned to marry and trying to explain how her mother had become the safest place in my life. No, that had never made it into the emergency plan. What exactly did she say? I asked. Diane let out a slow breath. She said if you matter to me, she'd rather meet the truth than imagine something worse. That sounded like Rebecca, too clear, a little brutal, more generous than people gave her credit for. I nodded once, still trying to catch up. When? Tomorrow, lunch at her house. I laughed once under my breath, not because it was funny, because sometimes your life gets so strange that a laugh is the only sound left. Diane studied me carefully. "You can say no." "No, I can't." "You can." I looked back at her. "No, I can't." Because if I say no, then this becomes a shadow, a secret. A thing that has to stay hidden to survive, and I don't want that for you." Her eyes softened in that dangerous way they did when she was close to believing me. "You're sure?" "No, but certainty is not always the price of courage. Sometimes the price is just showing up while your pulse tries to talk you out of it." "I'm sure enough," I said. The next day, I stood outside Rebecca's front door with a bottle of wine I knew she probably would not even open, and the odd feeling that I was about to walk into a version of my old life wearing a completely different heart. Diane stood beside me in a dark green dress that made her look calm even though I knew she was not. She had gone quiet in the car, not distant. Just careful in the way people get when they are carrying something fragile inside their ribs. I reached for her hand before she could ring the bell. She looked at me. "We can leave," I said quietly. "Right now." She surprised me by smiling. "No," she said. "If we leave now, I'll just spend the rest of my life pretending the door scared me more than regret does." Then she rang the bell. Rebecca opened it a few seconds later. For one stupid second, my brain tried to put her in two places at once. The woman in front of me and the woman across a kitchen counter giving back a ring. But time had done its work. She looked older than the version I had been carrying around, softer in some ways, stronger in others. Her hair was shorter, her face less sharp with the need to win every feeling. She looked at Diane first, then at me, then at our hands, and to her credit she did not flinch. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I answered. Diane spoke gently. "Are you sure?" Rebecca stepped back from the door. "I invited you, didn't I?" There was warmth in it, dry warmth, familiar warmth, enough to let us breathe. Lunch was awkward for the first 10 minutes in exactly the normal way awkward lunch should be. Too much attention to plates, too many offers for water, too much pretending the weather mattered. Then Rebecca set down her fork, looked at me directly and said, "Are you good to her?" No build-up, no performance, straight to the thing, I answered just as directly. "I try to be." She held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded. "Good." That was it, not blessing, not absolution. But not war either. Diane looked between us like she was still waiting for hidden glass. Rebecca saw that and sighed. "Mom," she said, softer now, "I'm not upset because it's him." Diane blinked. "You're not?" "No." Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "I'm unsettled because life is weird and this is not a combination I ever would have predicted. But I'm not angry." Diane looked like she did not know where to put that. Rebecca kept going. "You know what I remember most from the end with him?" My whole body tensed before I could stop it. She looked at me briefly, then at her mother. "How tired he was," she said, "and how tired I was. We weren't wrong for each other in some dramatic, villainous way. We were just done long before we admitted it." That landed with the kind of mercy I had not earned but needed anyway. I let out a breath I had not realized I'd been holding. Rebecca gave me a small, almost amused look. "Relax. I'm not about to throw a drink at either of you." "To know," I said. That got the first real laugh of the meal. After that something opened, not wide, not all at once, but enough. We talked, carefully at first, then more naturally, about work, about the neighborhood, about Diane's garden, about the fact that Basil still did not trust her, about how Rebecca's little boy, Owen, had become obsessed with dinosaurs and now corrected adults with the confidence of a tiny dictator. That was when the child perspective truth moment arrived without warning. Owen came running into the kitchen in socks, stopped dead when he saw us all sitting there and looked at me. "Who are you?" he asked. Rebecca closed her eyes. "Owen." "What I'm asking." I tried not to laugh. "I'm Jake." He considered that seriously, then pointed at Diane and asked, "Do you make her happy?" The whole table went still. Children really do have a gift for cutting past all the adult architecture. Diane looked horrified. Rebecca looked embarrassed. And I looked at a 6-year-old holding a plastic triceratops like he had every right in the world to ask the only question that mattered. I answered him honestly. "Yes," I said. "At least I'm trying to." He nodded as if I had met some minimum requirement for continued existence. "Okay," he said. Then he climbed into Diane's lap like that settled everything. That was the moment the room finally exhaled. After lunch, Rebecca walked me to the front porch while Diane helped Owen wash grape juice off his shirt. We stood in the mild spring air with the door half open behind us. Rebecca crossed her arms and looked at me with the same sharp intelligence that used to make losing an argument to her feel like getting politely stabbed. "I meant what I asked in there," she said, "about being good to her. I know. She's stronger than people think. I know that too." Her expression changed just a little. "That's not the whole sentence." I waited. "She's stronger than people think," Rebecca said again, "which means people leave too much weight on her and call it a compliment." That hit me hard because it was exactly right. I nodded. "I won't." She studied my face for one long second, then gave a small shrug. "Then I guess life got strange in a better direction than I expected." It was the closest thing to approval I was going to get, and honestly it was more than enough. 6 months later, I asked Diane to marry me on the same porch where so much of our truth had learned to breathe. No audience, no performance, just the two of us, morning light, coffee between us, and the swing creaking softly under the weight of everything we had chosen. I did not kneel right away. First, I handed her something. The old blue mug, the first one she had left on my porch. She stared at it and laughed through sudden tears. "You kept this." "I kept everything that taught me how to find my way back to you." That was when I knelt. Her hand flew to her mouth, and for one perfect second she looked nothing like a woman afraid of being seen. She looked exactly like what she was, loved. She said yes before I finished the question. We married 3 months later in her garden with a few close friends, Rebecca, little Owen, and enough sunlight to make the whole afternoon feel borrowed from a kinder world. People talked, of course. People always do. But the thing about talk is this: it gets tired before real love does. And over time, Maple Grove got bored of its own opinions and moved on to other lawns, other rumors, other weather. We stayed. That was the part that mattered. Not because staying is always noble. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is habit. Sometimes it is loneliness in a nicer shirt. But when staying is chosen clearly, after truth, after shame, after the easy exits have all presented themselves and been refused, then it becomes something else. It becomes devotion. Some people think love announces itself in fireworks. It doesn't, not the kind that lasts. The kind that lasts is quieter than that. It turns on a porch light before dawn. It leaves soup by a door. It asks hard questions and waits for real answers. It refuses to let shame make the final decision. And if I learned anything from Diane, it is this: the strongest love is not the one that arrives without trouble. It is the one that sees the trouble clearly, steps closer anyway, and stays. He stayed. And that changed everything.